Two items on our agenda to begin with, but one has been moved to the September 21st council meeting. So tonight we will just have the discussion on the Ocotillo Road Bridge project. Who will be presenting? Oh, hi. Thank you.
All right, can you hear me? All right, perfect. Just to introduce myself, my name is Ryan Blair, Town of Gilbert CIAP Supervisor. Along with me is going to be our design consultant, Kimley Horn. We have David Rukowski and Marissa Pellegrini, and they will be also presented at this study session as well. First of all, I just want to thank you for your time, Mayor and Council, for allowing us to kind of go over the Ocotillo Road Improvements Project. So just to put this in perspective, this is Ocotillo Road from Greenfield to Higley Road. And so if you've ever driven this corridor, there is a huge missing link between these two major arterials that we are building a bridge across. So with that, next slide. There we go. So just a little bit of our objectives of tonight of presenting this to the council. We have the project background. So just very briefly, in the year 2000, the county actually did an assessment of this area to how to have connectivity between Greenfield and Higley Road. Also in 2010 and also 2018, the town itself did an assessment along the same corridor, but a lot of things changed since from the 2000 to the 2018, and that is the park master plan that came in, and we've already built a phase of that. And now it totally changed of how the town is going to move forward with this corridor, not just being a bridge from point A to point B, but also having connectivity into a future regional park underneath the bridge. So that's why we're here today. Also, part of this is the aesthetics of the bridge, what the bridge is going to look like. So that's why we're here also, is to come to the council, and we'll present at the very end of the presentation a survey that we would like the council to participate in to give us an idea of what's important to you as a council as to the aesthetics and how this bridge ultimately could look like in the end, to get your vision on that. And I believe, let me go to the next slide real quick. All right, with that, I'm going to turn the time over to David with Kimley Horn.
All right, I'm David Rukowski with Kimley Horn. I'm the design consultant project manager working with Ryan on the project. And I'm excited to be here tonight. This is an exciting project for the town, and we've got some fun to be had as we develop what this project actually is going to look like at the end of the day. And we're in the really early stages of design. So what you see before you is some of the goals that were established as part of a value analysis workshop that the town held month and a half ago or so, where we had all of the different town departments come in and really voice, their wants, their needs, where they saw this project going. And some of the goals that were developed as part of the project really came down to, how the project was going to be used. With multimodal connectivity being in the context of the park, and as well as a lot of the other normal pieces of a project. Making sure that we're meeting the budget and schedule goals for the project, but also talking about how the this bridge and this roadway project could be an iconic project for the town. Really focusing in on park access, trail amenities. All of the things that are going to go into the area, but also talking about, how is this project going to be used by, police and fire and that connectivity as well, because that's an important part of this project, because there is a missing link here, as Ryan had mentioned just a few minutes ago. So we talked about lots of different things and lots of different ways that this project could be used. Now, when we focused right down into it, we came up with, and I say we as the value analysis workshop team, the main design considerations that we needed to focus on as we move forward with design. So accessibility being one of the things that rose from the top, from that traffic standpoint as well as that pedestrian bicycle standpoint and how that connects to the park. Aesthetics were definitely one of those other pieces, this project being directly in the middle of future phases of the Gilbert Regional Park. That's an important component, and that's one of the biggest reasons that we're here tonight. Usability, making sure that we're considering what's happening underneath potentially a bridge structure that goes through the park, and making sure that we're making accommodations for those pieces. Serviceability, maintenance, making sure that whatever we do end up designing from the design side, that it's easy to maintain, that it's not something that's going to put the town's crews out or create additional cost in the future. Stormwater management, as you'll see here in a second, there's quite a few different water courses that run right through the middle of this project. It's a very specific context for this type of project. And then just constructability, making sure that we look at all of those different pieces that play into the budget and the overall goals of the economic side of the project. So then moving into the design considerations, like I said, the main reason that we're here tonight as the design team for the project is to talk about the aesthetics, and Marissa's really going to delve into that a little bit as far as the process and whatnot. So I had mentioned the site context, being that we're in the middle of the Gilbert Regional Park. Back in 2018, when the last assessment was done for this roadway, that was one of the things that project brought forward, is how do we integrate this project into the park? They looked at different types of bridge structures, looked at costs for this roadway project in general, and they also looked at a theme for the project. So, the roadway project here is highlighted in blue, and like Ryan mentioned, we're going to be going all the way from Greenfield to Higley with the project. Now, like I mentioned earlier, the connectivity with the park is important. In the red here is some of the preliminary trail systems from the park, and that has evolved through some recent work with the Gilbert Regional Master Plan. So we've been keeping up with that team as well and working back and forth on all of those different pieces to make sure that as they change, we adapt to what they're doing. The bigger pieces of this project really, kind of focusing in on how the park interlays into this, and that we are showing a bridge there because it is a basin. It's the Chandler Heights Regional Basin, and we're working with flood control from the county to make sure that we're looking at all the different pieces. So I'm going to focus in a little bit more on, each of the main parts of the project, I guess you could say the largest cost components of the project. The first one being the RWCD Canal. So this is one of the 4 different water courses that we have to cross with the project. And right now we're looking at either this being a box culvert or a bridge structure. There's lots of different ways to do it. Like I said, we're in the very early stages, so we're trying to find the most economical way to do it, and we're working with Sun Construction, who is this construction manager at risk for the project, to look at costs and the cost differentials of each type of structure. The next crossing that we have is the Eastern Mariposa Floodway. So that's a major floodway for the town, so it's important that we maintain those water flows as we cross through. This is envisioned right now as a 3-span bridge, but we're looking at lots of different things still, like access for flood control and how that's going to work with these bridge structures and where the trails are going to be. You can see some light lines in blue here. That's directly from the master plan for the park. So we're working through that to see how access works in connection to those trail systems. Moving over to the Ocotillo, or to the Queen Creek crossing, that crossing is very similar to the EMF crossing. Same type of bridge. We're trying to see if we can actually align the 2 different structures to make them as uniform as possible, to make them easy to build. And again, same issues there with maintenance, access, and trail connectivity, because we do have some connectivity that's coming across from the Sunoki Wash into Queen Creek. And then finally, last but not least, is the Gilbert Regional Park crossing, which is the Chandler Heights Basin. This is the structure that we're mainly focusing on tonight. but whatever input that we get from council and a lot of the other different focus groups that we're going to talk to is going to play into the project as a whole as well, because we know that we can't just have the one focal point. We have to kind of blend it overall just between the project itself as well as the park. So that's definitely important. In fact, I'm going to go back real quick if I can. All right, I was impatient. All right, the blue line work here that's showing is the Gilbert Regional Park. Like I said, I just wanted to mention that. You can kind of see the pump track on the left and the skate park on the right, the main road that comes through, and that's some of the info that you've seen in the past. And this is what we're working with to try and accommodate everything that's in the master plan as well. So we've had lots of discussions with parks recently, had a really good roadway workshop with the town staff to try and flesh out some of the details of the project. So in that previous study that I mentioned in 2018, there was a lot of outreach that was done. Town council was involved back then. There were a couple different focus groups that were met with from the town manager's office, Parks and Rec Board, Arts Committee, the Youth Advisory Committee, as well as a virtual survey that was done. And one of the things that came out of that project that was done for the town was a project theme. And that was through all of the different input that was received from that project, all the different workshops. And so that theme was the Desert Oasis theme, and that's what we're applying to this project moving forward out of that study. So what you see on the screen now is some of the inspiration with the different water courses throughout Arizona, be it the lakes, the streams, the rivers, what have you. We're trying to figure out a way to adapt that to this project, not necessarily putting more water features in with this project, but just the patterns and those types of things that we can draw out of that to use as some of the aesthetics pieces of this project. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Marissa, and she's going to talk a little bit about where we're at now and where we're going.
Thanks, David. So where are we now? So essentially, we want to use the previously conducted outreach and apply that to our next steps moving forward. We know that our theme is Desert Oasis, and how does that translate to the design and construction of the bridge? So we'll utilize our stakeholders in order to do this. Town council, various focus groups, the public, and we'll also create a project-specific steering committee as well. These are the same stakeholders that were involved in the theming aspect of the project, so it's been one of our goals to really kind of keep as much continuity and stakeholder involvement as possible. So we have our stakeholders, we have our theme. How are we going to go about establishing concepts? So essentially, we'll start today with our meeting with council, followed by various focus groups and the project-specific steering committee that I mentioned earlier. We'll use that information to establish the vision, and everything we've heard will create 4 concepts to start. Next, we'll refine the vision, which will be narrowing it down to 2 concepts. We'll then come back to you all, as well as the focus groups, the steering committee, and the public, to finalize the design concept, verify the design concept, and move right into 30% design plans. The virtual outreach tools, given our current environment, will be adapted to be interactive public process tools. And so we'll be using a multitude of platforms in order to conduct the focus group workshops as well as the outreach. And we'll be working closely with Gilbert Digital in order to advertise all of these opportunities very well. In addition to social media platforms, we'll also be utilizing a project-specific website for this project and a project-specific public coordinate, which will be kind of a very interactive outreach process in which users can leave comments or really go there to learn a little bit more about the project. In addition to the virtual outreach, we'll also be reaching out to individual HOAs that are affected by the project, specifically Freeman Farms and Shamrock Estates, to name a couple. And we'll also be, I think it's important to mention that in the theming process, we did do virtual outreach. We reached over 1,000 people. And that was a fairly short outreach period. Given our schedule and given the process that I went through earlier, we do anticipate this being a relatively robust outreach process, and we do anticipate getting a lot of touch points from different members of the community. So with that, I'll let Ryan go over next steps.
All right, so hopefully each of you received the survey questions. Awesome. So I'll just go over some of the survey questions here. So number one, utilizing the theme Desert Oasis to guide the aesthetics design for multiple features within the project limits. So here's some of our questions. What would be your definition of Desert Oasis? Next question, how do you envision the Desert Oasis theme being applied to this project? What unique Gilbert characteristics could be incorporated into the Desert Oasis theme? Question number two, the Ocotillo Road Bridge that will be constructed over a future phase of the Gilbert Regional Park is meant to be iconic. When you hear iconic, what is the first thought that comes to your mind? Question three, in your eyes, what would make the aesthetics of this project successful? And then last, which isn't really a question, but if you have any additional comments, questions, or considerations that would help us as a team to help us better understand kind of your perspective on what we're trying to accomplish here, we would appreciate any of those comments as well. And as you see on the board here, September 14th is our deadline. We would like to reach out, a project team member will try to reach out. We're not sure exactly how we're going to reach out yet, but we will try to reach out to the council within about a week's time period just to kind of see where you're at, if you have any questions, comments, if we can help out in any way. But we'd like to incorporate your feedback by September 14th so that we can start working towards our design and the other focus groups that were already mentioned as part of this presentation. So with that, that's the end of our presentation, but we appreciate your time and consideration with what we presented today.
Thank you, Ryan. Any comments, questions, feedback for Ryan now? Councilmember Anderson? Councilmember Tilkey?
Thanks, Mayor. I don't want to go backwards, but when I hear the theme Desert Oasis, I'm just wondering if that is being sensitive to the conversations we're having on water today, and is that creating an identity that maybe would appear that we're not interested in conservation?
Yeah, so two parts of that. So I like the question of what does the word Desert Oasis mean to you? To each member of the council, that can mean something totally different. I spent a lot of time up in the desert, and oasis to me doesn't always necessarily mean water. It can be beauty, it can be flowers, it can be things of that nature that doesn't always go towards water. The second is the inspiration is Desert Oasis. And so what we do is we take the inspiration, we try to create that through concrete, through structures, through steel, but not necessarily adding water components to the project.
Councilmember Anderson.
Well, one consideration of that is Gilbert is very well known for our desert riparian areas, which do occur out in the desert, and it's not necessarily something that we have to just be sensitive to water because it's a naturally occurring feature. And we've taken advantage of that in the town by creating artificial recharge ponds that have created riparian areas in the town, and I think that's certainly something we could consider in the future. You were talking about iconic features of the bridge. We could take advantage of those riparian areas that we're known for in the state and show that on the bridge. If it's not going to be built by China. Is that correct, Patrick?
Mayor, Councilman Anderson, I apologize.
Former council member Cook thought this was going to be built by the Chinese. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, that check never came through.
Yeah. Anyway, that's just some preliminary input that I'd have to it.
Awesome, thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Do you envision most of the aesthetics being focused on that central bridge over the regional park, or will aesthetics be incorporated into the other two bridges as well?
I think David tried to allude to that. Yes, we're concentrating on the bridge above the park, but that will go out to the adjacent bridges as well. We want to make this a package of, let's focus on the middle, but that's going to try to trickle out into the outer bridges as well. At that point, it's just going to come down to how much do we want the bridge to cost.
Any other comments?
Mayor, I'm going to assume what comes back to us isn't going to be one design concept, but maybe a couple different options with different price tiers, or, I mean, we could all have some really, elaborate creative ideas, but they might not be what the council chooses to financially support.
Correct. So we're going to go first. We're going to come back with 4. We're going to we're doing a lot of different outreach with different focus groups with the Town of Gilbert steering committees, council, the Arts Task Force, the Mayor Advisory. We're taking all this information that we gain from everybody, and we're going to come up with 4 concepts. We're going to take those 4 concepts. We're going to then meet with those same groups again and say, okay, here's from the input that we received from you, here's the 4 concepts. We need to narrow this down to 2. So what may happen is they may take portions of those 4 concepts that they like and incorporate that into 2 concepts. And that's what we'll bring back to the council, say, all these focus groups came back from 4, now we're to 2, and we'll have a different set of survey questions, I'm assuming. Okay, here's where we're at. We need to try to narrow this down to 1. And then once we get down to 1, then we'll come back to council and say, here's what was agreed upon by all the different focus groups, all the committees we met with. This is not a quick process, so this is a very robust process that's going to take quite the time. Our anticipation is to have 30% design by April, so that kind of puts it in perspective how much work we need to do to try to gain the data that we need to come up with those concepts.
And just for clarification, Mayor, is the fiscal lens going to be a part of that, how we kind of filter through some of the design concepts? So we have, I don't know, a range that we are going to be anticipating, and it's not just shocking when we... Yeah,
so part of that is we do have the CMAR on board, which is the contractor. So this is kind of unique where we typically don't bring the contractor on board till around 30% design. So we brought them on from conception, and they were part of our value analysis workshop that we did. They're going to be along the way out of every phase. We'll say, if these 4 phases, here's what this is going to cost. At phase 2 concepts, here's what it's going to cost. And so we have a pretty good idea, having them on board from the beginning, of what those costs may look like.
Patrick, do we have a ballpark of what this figure would look like for this bridge? I thought that we did.
Yep, Mayor, for the stage of design that we're in, which is very, very early, we do have an overall project budget. And if I could phone a friend, I don't see David Fabiano in the office. Or I'm sorry, in the...
Oh, Ryan can answer.
Ryan, do you have it?
The total budget is $67 million for the project. The construction portion of it is $54 million.
Thank you. So it won't be higher than that, let's say. I know what you're saying, Councilmember Yentes. It'll come in within that range.
Is my memory totally not serving me? When Mayor Daniels was in office, I think this had come to us at a price tag of around $30 million, but now I don't remember what that scope covered. And we went back and said, we got to sharpen our pencils.
Yeah, Mayor Pearson, Councilmember Yentes. So you may be thinking of the conversations we had around the transportation impact fee that was put in place, that we would generate about $30 million from that source of revenue, which would cover just a little under half of the total project.
Any other comments or questions for Ryan? Thank you. I would suggest everybody try and take this survey so you get some more feedback from us. You can use the QR code on the back to make it a little bit easier, and you'll get some feedback from us that way, Ryan.
Awesome. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks, David and Marissa. Thanks for being here this evening. So that concludes our items on our study session agenda, but I'll adjourn the study session, and then we can do a little training on our electronic voting. So Adjourn. Does anyone know who's going to train us on our electronic voting?